Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Commercial Real Estate Secrets. Today, our guest is Dr. Marc Faber, and he's the founder and CEO of Edge Dental Management. Now, they started in 2012, and they've grown to 7 locations with a couple more acquisitions in the work, and they currently hold the real estate for 5 of those locations. And so without further ado, Marc, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How's it going today?
Fantastic. Well, happy to be here.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, so obviously, we're coming to you from Orlando, Florida, but why don't you tell everybody where you guys are located?
All right, so I'm up. Well, I live in Jersey, but I'm working in New York, but not in Manhattan or Long Island, but actually in the beginning of upstate New York, in like Orange County and Rockland County and a little bit of Dutchess. So I get to live near the city, but work far away from it.
There you go. Yeah, just far enough away to not be totally, locked down by all the stuff that happens in the inner city, huh?
Well, yeah, forget about that. Traffic, life is great, and I have a reverse commute.
Right.
All those years driving into the city is was just terrible. I can't imagine how much time I wasted. Now it's like I leave my house, I know exactly what time I'm getting to work. It's great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm excited to tell everybody your story. What was it for you? Like, when you were a younger kid, did you know you wanted to go into dental? Did you know you wanted to go into healthcare? What was that process like for you?
I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Obviously, everyone has times where they're going to like explore and figure out themselves. Obviously, my father was a dentist, so he had a kind of a inside view of like what that life was like. I learned to, and I didn't even realize it at the time. I learned from certain experiences, like how to treat people and how not to treat people. But kind of, everything kind of like I followed like the breadcrumbs. And, after I finished, I made the decision to go to dental school. That was fine. But kind of figuring out myself in business, that was really following the breadcrumbs and following my path. And it's really been unbelievable.
That's cool. So your dad kind of helped you get into this. So is this like, would you say high school area, or was it more in college when you finally decided what you're going to do?
It was in more college. I was always good at science and math. A terrible reader for some reason, but I knew, and I didn't. If I remember correctly, my thought process was that medicine was like too serious. You're really dealing with life and death, and it's not necessarily something that I wanted to deal with. But dentistry was a good option. It was a good option. It wasn't as serious, but it's definitely where you're in a position where you can help people, really help people.
Right. Yeah. So you, when you graduated from dental school, how long was it before you opened your own practice, or what was that process like? Where did you work?
I was always, I was looking around even in dental school for just based off locations. Like, I learned something. One thing I learned about business in dental school was you need patience. And going to a location where there's a lot of competition, it would be harder to get patients. So I was already looking a little bit outside of where I live or my father practices. But that being said, as soon as I graduated, I started working for my father, but I was already looking. A year after I was in private practice, I basically purchased my first practice in 2012.
Oh, nice. So you pretty much were on your own for a year, and then you're like, all right, it's time.
Well, it didn't. Well, it also at that time. That time when I was with my father, I learned a lot. I learned a lot what to do, and I learned more importantly what not to do. And I found things that I liked and found things that I really didn't like. And the truth is, I didn't make enough money that first year working for my father. I dipped into my savings to support my family, and I needed, it was very clear that I needed to do something else in order to, provide. But one of the things that was very difficult at the time is that my father was very stubborn to change. I wanted to do things a little bit differently. It was a little, he's been doing business the same way for almost 30 years at that time. It was very hard to commit to change, even though he understood what I was saying. It's just very hard for him to pull the trigger.
So, do you care to go into any of those examples? You said there was stuff that you liked, stuff that you didn't like. Is there anything
Well,
that stands
well,
out?
I mean, space was an issue. My father had a practice on 57th and 6th. It was like literally like 800 square feet,
Wow.
maybe less. 200. It was two chairs. If we wanted to put it like a panoramic X-ray in there, it was impossible. Everything was like, everything was really tight. Um, Location was amazing. You're smack in the middle of Midtown. Um, that being said, he was in a building that had probably like at one point probably had 100 dentists. It was 57th West 57th Street. A lot of famous dentists have worked there, and I found that it was very challenging to get patients. Very challenging to build up a patient base. Um, I was able to do a few things back then with ZocDoc when it was a little bit more user friendly, and it was also early on, but it wasn't. It was just very hard to develop relationships with patients. It's very transient. A lot of people come in for work, so I didn't like that. I really didn't like that. Also, the number of competition was incredible. If someone didn't like you, they just go next door, literally next door, and or if they didn't like you, they didn't like your office, or if you weren't running on time. It was challenging, and you only had two. You didn't have any. It wasn't any room for wasn't any wiggle room. Also, my father was I guess it's old school that he didn't have a hygienist, so he was doing all the cleanings, and
Wow.
yeah, so it was like it was tough. It was a tough time. I spent a lot of time doing cleanings back then, um, but and then I was able to make a deal on this place up in Monroe, and we kind of took off, literally took off. I had space, I had patience, I had was able to get employees. It was really just
Hmm.
just took off from day one.
Yeah, and for us, obviously, the site selection process is what we focus on. I mean, the commercial real estate aspect of it is 100% what we do, and we think it's probably like the second most important decision you make. The first one is just, are you going to open a business, right? And the second one is like, okay, where am I going to go? Where am I going to put it? So what was that process like? Because you already had made up in your mind you wanted to open a business, you just hadn't decided where to go yet. So how did you start, looking at places, and how did you finally pull the
So,
trigger?
so this location was a place that I actually was eyeing since high school. That's high school, since dental school. I knew that there were just an unbelievable amount of people there, and there weren't enough dentists.
Hmm.
And where I am in Monroe, New York, right next to this Hasidic village called Kiryas Joel, and I have family that lives there, and I knew that they're having issues. There weren't enough dentists just from speaking to my family members. But I also know it's the fastest growing community in the United States of America. Each
Wow.
family there has about 10 to 12 kids, and yeah, at that growth rate, there's just you will have enough patients. The ratio of patients to dentists was just inordinate. Let's say in New York City, where there's millions of people, you have that many more dentists, so the ratio is not that good.
Yeah.
Going over there, where the population growth is tremendous, and there's not really that many new dentists opening up, or that many dentists there to begin with, and they're all older. It just provided so much more opportunity. So, and you say, real estate is whatever, you have your two different things here that's really important, whether it's, whether you're going to own a business and I guess you're going to buy the real estate. But I think the most important thing is that ratio, are there enough patients? And I didn't need to do market research on this to figure out how many people this and how many people have this insurance or that. I just knew that there was just a crazy population over there, and they were being underserved. And basically, no matter what I do, I would probably be successful over there. And I was really right about that.
Mm. So, how long did it take you from the time you decided to open up until you were like, profitable or growing or at capacity or?
So I bought an existing practice,
Okay.
and 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 it didn't have real metrics. Didn't have practice management software. He wasn't even taking digital X-rays. He was taking old traditional X-rays. His tax return was a mess, and I really had nothing to validate what the practice was worth. And most people would step away from something like that, but I was buying for location, and I got a pretty good deal on it. I got a very good deal on it, and I was profitable from day one,
Nice.
literally day one. I mean, I guess it's been so long. I could say how much I bought it for. But I bought this practice for $237,000,
Nice.
and in my first 12 months, I did close to $800,000.
Wow. Wow. So, did you do any sort of seller financing? Did you have to get? Did you?
No,
Have
I got 100% financing from Bank of America,
Nice.
which is great. But they, the issues were that I did so well that, and I want that, Bank of America wasn't used to this. They didn't believe the numbers. My accountant at the time, by the way, was very instrumental in everything I did. Every decision that I made, and taught me so much.
Wow.
He said, like, maybe you just got lucky over here. Maybe you don't know what you're doing. And I was definitely onto something. And soon, literally a year into it, I had to expand. And there was a dry cleaner next door that was kind of just like going out of business slowly. And I spoke to the landlord, and I was able to get the space. And then I did it. I literally a year after I bought it, I started doing construction again. I had to fix up the place the first time a little bit, and I went from 3 chairs to 8 chairs, and that was an experience.
So when you say next door, you mean literally next door, like, so you just expanded into that area?
Yeah, I broke through the wall.
Okay.
In the shopping center over there, and it was that was a big deal. So a year into business, I'm already, I'm not only I bought a practice and I doubled it or quadrupled it. I'm already spending money now a second time on doing a massive construction.
Nice. So, I know you mentioned he was doing traditional X-rays, not digital. Aside from that, like, it sounds like he had a massive opportunity, right? With the entire population, how fast it was growing. What do you think, like, kept him from growing so fast, and what do you think it was that helped you, like, to fully, take advantage of the market?
I guess he didn't see the forest from the trees. He was looking for short-term gains, not long-term gains. He didn't invest in the business. Looking for the quickest buck, most likely. Early on, I went, within, when I first started, I was dipping X-rays. I didn't have anything. But within like 2 months, I had digital X-rays. I had a pen. I had practice management software, and I started laying the foundations of a good business. But more so, I was getting good employees, and people were kind of. I don't know. Back then, I had a few really good employees that are still with me today, and they helped really build my business. And whether I was fair to them, I was definitely fair to them, but I gave them ownership of it, and not like physical ownership, but like I let them make decisions. I didn't micromanage them, and that was also really important.
And what employees were they? Like, what positions were they doing?
They were front desk. Eventually became a biller, and an assistant, and then became managers, and a lot of these people are still in my organization and are very important. They're like core people of the business.
Okay, and you were the practicing doctor at the time. They were.
Yeah, I was right. I was a practicing doctor at the time. At first, I was only there 3 days. I was still going back to the city working with my dad a little bit. Wow. But then it slowly went, it slowly turned into full time, and so what happened then was in 2015. So 3 years into this, after the initial purchase, after the construction, then I bought my second practice, and I did that to make room for my brother, who's also a dentist.
Oh, nice.
And this is the beginning of where our kind of our philosophy began. I bought a very, I would say I bought a practice that nobody else would ever think about buying, and we did, and bought it for like I wrote a check. That's how small it was, and it turned, that practice was maybe doing $200,000 at the time, and now a few years later, that practice now is doing like $1.8 million. That's good.
Oh, wow.
fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so with this one, how important was the site selection for you? You said nobody would touch this one.
Tremendous.
Sounds like it was
There's only one
undervalued.
other. There's only one other dentist in town, and there's just so many patients.
Yeah.
Another good location.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's what we try and coach too. We think is so important is like because there's a lot of things that you can get lost in the weeds. So to say like how you're going to run your business, but if you have the wrong location, from the beginning, it's going to be really, really, really hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like that was one of the instrumental things that you did early on was you looked at the location, you looked at the population per dentist ratio to really dictate where you were going to go.
Right. Well, there's more than that. It's also visibility. It's also, you got to do what I call reconnaissance, where you literally just sit in front of that practice, see what's going on in town, see what businesses are there, what the traffic's like. It's all those little things that like you're not going to get on a tax return or a spreadsheet or a production or collection report. You got to see what's going on. And upstate, it's kind of upstate or really anywhere in the country. It's really easy just to see what is going on over there, and it's not so complicated.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. And so with this, so when you bought the first practice, were you also acquiring the real estate, or did you just buy the practice of that one?
So no, at first it was just the practice. But the situation was, the landlord had moved out of town, but I mean, when I redid my lease, when I expanded, I put in there a right of first refusal in my contract. And by the way, I was second in line. And after literally 5 years of negotiating and working out and finding partners and everything, I finally got this property for that first office, which was a tremendous amount of work, but also very worth it because it's like when you play Monopoly, you want the properties, you want the oranges or the yellows or the greens. They all have their own value. It's strategic location. This happens to be a very good strategic location. So the real estate itself is at a traffic light. There's no other traffic lights in the area, and everything in that area kind of has to go through that property.
Yeah, that's smart. And so, all right, now you've got, two locations, and this sounds like the second one, you kind of did the similar thing. Like it was untouchable. So you came in, you had your processes in play at this time. You set up your healthcare.
We didn't. Yeah, well, we weren't there yet. We were slowly getting our processes were still developing. When we opened that second practice, we switched over to a different practice management software to start creating centralized billing. At that time was Dentrix Enterprise, which was in the long term a terrible mistake for other reasons. one of my big blunders. And the other thing we started doing is really involving. Right before that, we got involved in we started doing digital dentistry. We started scanning for crowns. Maybe like 3-4 months before we bought that office. That first office, just to put things in perspective, that first office still has a very nice sized Medicaid population, and I made the decision to do digital dentistry on those patients because it creates an efficiency. When you scan for a crown, it's a more accurate impression, and the crown will fits very easily from those impressions. We were having issues with taking the impression, sending it to the lab, getting it back 2 weeks later. First of all, even if the patient showed up, even if they didn't show up, the crown, we'd spend way too much time trying to get that crown in, and for the reimbursement rate, it just wasn't worth it. So at that time, back as 2015, we started really heavily investing in this digital dentistry technology.
And so at this stage, like, what are you thinking about in terms of growing and scaling? Like, do you have big ambitions, or are you thinking, is it just like one day at a time? I mean, what's going through your head? What's your long-term plan?
I mean, initially my plan was have one office. I was running like 24/6, whatever, 6 days a week, every day, as many hours per day. I never really contemplated at first that I was going to have multiple locations with many doctors with specialties. But I realized early on that I wanted to diversify. If I have my entire office, I have one office that is the primary base is Medicaid. The government could kind of just like flip the switch, and now they cut your fees by 10%. And as one office, you really don't have any type of negotiating power. So the reason for the expansion was for diversification, believe it or not. And my brother happened to be at the right time, the right place with my brother, but it was diversification was really the reason for it. I wanted to have a diverse dental business.
Okay. And so when you were doing the second location with your brother, were you guys partnering in terms of the ownership, or were you hiring him as an employee and you were taking on all the capital risks and that sort of thing?
We did it slowly. He came in as an employee at first. We first wanted to make sure that this would work. Then a year later, we bought the third practice, and then we kind of started doing. We started to form our partnership at that point, and this is when I started having troubles with Bank of America. Even though I love the guys over there, it was difficult because my growth was so fast that they weren't ready to give me some money. They weren't, even though they had everything was with them, my bank accounts, deposits, my loans, everything was with them. In November, at the end of the year, that Monroe practice doubled, right? Went like almost 1.8 million dollars after the construction, and they didn't consider any of that growth because we didn't have a tax return for it yet. So it made it very complicated to get a loan for the third practice, and the fourth practice, and the fifth practice too. It was a constant battle with them. But that was the beginnings of my issues with Bank of America.
And so then did you have to find a new financing partner?
We were just kicked out from Bank of America.
Oh.
No, we knew this was going to happen because then, so all these practices, you buy these small practices, you grow them really quickly, and you're out of space. And so on that construction project, the big construction project that I was telling you about beforehand, we went to Bank of America, say, hey, we have this, we're under contract for this building. We want to move our practice because we can't grow anymore in this, and we know we can. We need financing to do construction on this, and they said we can't give you financing. So we went to another bank to get financing, and obviously the real estate was the collateral on that loan. But as soon as we did that, we were in violation of technically our contract with Bank of America, and this literally happened right before Corona. We started that loan probably like maybe in February last year, literally a year ago. And they, obviously they weren't going to send us a cease and desist letter or whatever, or a letter saying, hey, that you have to repay all your money now because during a pandemic. But as soon as the pandemic ended, we got that letter, but we were prepared. We knew this was coming, and we found a new financing partner at that time.
Okay, so you're just able to refinance. Yeah. All right. So you got now you're at your third location with you and your brother. How long did it take you? That was also an acquisition, right? The third location that you guys.
Yeah. So 2015 is I bought the second. 2016 we bought the third office.
Right.
2017 I bought the fourth office. 2018 was number 5. And then it was literally the last day of 2018. And then basically in 2020, we bought 2 practices, one right before Corona and one towards, I guess, in August. That's how we got to 7.
And like the one that you bought after August, were you able to get a good price for that because of the,
yes,
COVID-19 and the pandemic? Okay. So they were like a motivated doctor. They're ready to get out.
Yeah, he wasn't going back, and he really, really nice guy. We bought the practice and real estate for very, very little amount of money. His practice was doing about $250 in 2019. In our first 6 months, we did $450. So
that's crazy. So he's doing $250 in revenue up in New York. I mean, it seems like it'd be hard to live off that when you consider all the expenses for him.
Well, he was, he's in the 70s. He was slowing down. He probably did very well during his career. And it was probably a very robust practice at one time. But again, he had crazy inefficiencies over there that I knew that I could exploit. And I mean, this is probably our best example of being able to find the inefficiencies beforehand and evaluate them, put in the systems, and flip it around immediately. Because this is going to be like this will be probably a 4 or 5x at the end of this year, the end of the first 2 months.
Wow. So you're growing the revenue by whatever 5 times the amount, whatever percentage that is, right?
If you do $450,000 in your first 6 months, by the way, with brand new doctors literally right out of residency too. Some of the inefficiencies, again, he wasn't using digital X-rays. He didn't have practice management software. He didn't have a hygienist. He didn't have the digital crowns, digital scanning, a CEREC. He had no idea what to do with insurance. I mean, the list really goes on and on and on. But the more of these inefficiencies that I could find, and especially with the large patient base, it's just a recipe for real success.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, how many doctors and dentists there are that are still running those types of systems, right? I mean, it's a very competitive industry. There's a lot of individual operators out there, and the fact that they've been able to get by like so long having these inefficiencies is crazy.
Yeah, well, it's also level of care, quality of care. I mean, I personally think that our office's work is better than the doctors around down the road who are not using the technology. They're not scanning. They may be fantastic doctors and great practitioners, and have really good clinical results, but the fact is that when you use traditional impressions, or if you're not taking digital X-rays, you're either missing things, or with impressions, the stuff shrinks or expands, and it's not as accurate. And I think a lot of the technology has been able to I don't say level out the playing field between good and bad practitioners, but it makes it easier to provide better care.
So, I know that you own the real estate for 5 of them now, but not all those were at the same time that you acquired the practices. So with the,
just the first one, just the first one was delayed. Everything else, all the other ones I kind of purchased when I was, moving in there.
So, and then because, a lot of times, most of the time, I mean, when you're trying to grow a business with multiple locations, I mean, you're always constrained by the capital. So was it hard to get the financing for both the business and the real estate?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, yes and no, because obviously I had my issues with Bank of America, but but the real estate where I am is not that expensive, except for the first one. The first one was very expensive. Everything else, where I am upstate New York, it's not, it's not like in the city where the real estate's worth more than practice. It's and those situations, I personally I don't like that. Yeah. Like the dental business should be worth more than the real estate in general, because you're able to grow it, and there are a lot more things you could do with it. When you have the reverse, I guess the reverse equation where the real estate's worth more than the practice, it makes it very burdensome to buy the real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've seen that in other locations, but I mean, just if you spend $3 million on a nice spot in the city, but your business cannot generate that kind of money, it's like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it is. We have seen it. It is crazy. It's very situational. The assumption is that the real estate is just going to continue to go up. It's more of a long-term play because it's only worth a factor of rent usually, right? And so when you're paying more than the cap rate, like in the rent rate justifies, then it's a little bit more speculative.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that this is the reason why a place like Heartland or some of these other larger DSOs can't justify opening up in Midtown. It's one of the reasons, not the only reason. It's one of the reasons that the real estate is so expensive, or the rent is so much higher than what they're used to.
Yeah. No, it's great. we don't really have a preference between buying and owning your own real estate. If anything, we might lean more towards not owning the own real estate of your practice. But it's very situational. So like in your case, it's good to have control, right? Like you want to be able to control what you're doing. And the benefits are, of course, like you're paying rent to yourself and you're building equity long-term, but also depending on your growth goals, coming out of pocket for the down payment. And maybe you didn't have to in your case with the financing that you had, but a lot of times you got to come out of pocket for the down payment, and then that could really slow down your growth goals. And so we always come at it from a location first priority, like find the right location and then worry about buying or renting it secondarily, but you got to find that right location. And so it sounds like that's what you did, is like population, street visibility, all that stuff.
Correct. And so here's the thing. I buy real estate to protect the dental business. If I and that's like kind of my my motto on this. One time these are one of the buildings we bought. I had to really come out of pocket for actually take profits from the dental business, and not gonna mix and match. These are two separate businesses. Yeah. Real estate's got to fund real estate. Dental's has to fund dental, and I kind of mixed that for once, and probably not gonna do that again. But it's, sometimes you need to protect the business because, it makes it easier to sell down the road, because if you're the landlord, you'll be able to, you'll be able to give another lease, even though, most landlords want to keep dental office there, but you never know what will happen, what will change in the market, where you have, where the landlord's like, I don't want to have you here. I want to switch this whole thing over to something else. Then you're really out of luck after you have this whole infrastructure over there. So
yeah, and the build out is not cheap.
The build out's not cheap, but it has its perks, and it has its things that just are terrible about it. But
well, I mean, like if the landlord kicked you out, like that's expensive. Like if he's kicking you out and you got to go find a new spot, you're going to be paying a lot of money in the build out.
Correct, but you have a lease to kind of protect you, where you'll have enough notice on that. But I've seen crazy leases where they said we could kick you out at any time, which is something I would never sign. But yeah, that's it. The point of, I view real estate, at least in my business, to protect my dental business, being able to sell it one day or transfer it one day, or being able to maneuver. If you don't have that control, you could be, you could really it could really hurt your business in the long run, I think.
Yeah. So what do you like? How many locations are you trying to grow by, at the end of this year, and then also just like the next 5 or 10 years? And what do you look for? Is it a combination of distressed dentists in good locations? Like, does it have to line up perfectly, or are there other things that you're looking for as well?
Well, look, locations are, we don't want to grow too quickly, meaning that we want to be able to support the offices that we purchase or and expand. But it's a two-step thing, because like I've been saying all along here, is that we buy these practices that are really undervalued, and we just have to flip a few switches, and we get those practices up to a really healthy number. Our issue is that we have to then move them, and we have to find space for them,
because they're utilizing all their space, and you grow it to the point where that's not enough anymore.
Correct. So that's what that's a lot of my money is going over there, actually, because now, as opposed to building out from, doing a de novo, even if I found the right spot, but to build out a massive office, I'm talking 15 chairs, you have to have real balls to do that. And, spending all that money with no patients coming in yet. You think it may work, but you never know. Here, we're kind of mitigating that risk a bit, because we're buying in a good location. We have a patient base. Okay, now the business is doing well. Okay, so we'll move it, and we'll build, and we'll find the right size office for ourselves. So so I have like a two-tiered growth, like in that way, which I don't know if which I feel like a lot of DSOs do not have, because they're building out usually from day one, and they're also not buying the business that I'm buying. So it's like I'm kind of in a little bit of my own world here.
Yeah, no, you've carved out a nice little niche, which is important. Especially when you're getting started, like if you don't have a niche, it's just, you're going to fall flat really early on. So it sounds like what you're doing is very niche and it's also working out very well for you. So do you have plans, like 5 years, 10 years from now, like where do you see this going?
I mean, you never know. I mean, our philosophy could change after, once we hit like a critical mass, we could probably change our philosophy a little bit and buy differently. But it's also the philosophy is that it's very hard to train some of these older dentists. And I'm not running to take on a dentist who's been practicing for 20, 30 years and try to teach them what we're doing. I just feel like we'll be unsuccessful doing that. So it's going to be hard to find that right balance. Maybe find some younger practices and buy those, or we buy the older practices and we kick out the doctor like we always do and put in new doctors over there. I don't know if my model is fully scalable like some of these other places that are buying 10, 20, 30, 50 offices a year. It's not, I don't think it's that type of business. However, I do think my Ebitda and my returns are much higher than those practices.
Right. And you'd rather have, if your Ebitda is going to be the exact same, would you rather have 10 locations or one location, right? I mean, you'd rather have one location because it's just much less headache.
Right. Correct. But it's also that as I'm growing, organically and also with acquisitions, my Ebitda has not dropped, which is very healthy right now. But I'm not doing it at the same speed or the same clip as some of these other places, like even like a place like Dental 365, or some of the other I guess groups that are out there. But it's okay. We do we have we got to stick to the plan.
Yeah. So, I think some key takeaways for the listeners, it sounds like regardless of any business, is knowing the location that you're going to, knowing the demographics. Like in your case, you knew that there was extreme growth in the first location that you acquired, right? Like, 10 to 12 kids per family is insane. And then it's also knowing the competition, right? And those are two of the things that we coach too, is like, what are the demographics like, but B, what's your competition? Because a lot of times it's easy to gloss over and just say, well, my business is different, or I'm unique and we're very special and we don't have any competition, but that can come back and bite you if you just gloss over it.
Well, I mean, competition is important, but not to know your competition, but to realize this really isn't competition, because I think the stat is 40% of the country goes to the dentist twice a year. So, as opposed to 125% of the country has one cell phone or two cell phones. So it's there's a lot of room to capture patients in ways it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's so many more patients out there than dentists. If everybody went to the dentist, there wouldn't be enough dentists in the country. So competition is important, but not. It's important to know what they're doing, how to be strategic, but it's not actually competition from the fact that there's enough patients to go around.
Yeah. I mean, so is part of your strategy then like getting people to come to the dentist that wouldn't normally come?
I don't market at all. I haven't. I mean, we do a little bit now, but that was the other cool thing that we had is that we buy these offices with these patient bases, and there's so much dentistry sitting there that hasn't been done. We didn't have to go out and spend 10% or whatever it is to get patients in the door. Literally, I think my marketing last year or 2 years ago was like 0.02% on my P&L. I mean,
that's great.
It's great. I mean, it's fantastic. But I know a lot of people are always worried about marketing. How am I going to get new patients? And it's not necessarily the issue. It's treating the patients you have already in the practice and keeping them there.
Yeah, keeping them there. And another thing that we like to talk about too is, think about your rent or your location as a factor of marketing sometimes, because you can get a really cheap building, you can get a really cheap office, maybe you're paying $3,000 a month in rent, but it's recessed way in the back, nobody ever sees it. And then now, if you're not getting new patients, and what happens? Well, you're going to have to spend marketing in that situation, right? And digital marketing is not cheap. I mean, a lot of them are auction bidding platforms. I mean, it's only going to go up. And so that's why we coach people at the beginning, like, hey, make sure you're doing your due diligence and you're finding those good locations, because then you can really offset the marketing. And in situations like yours, it's been nothing.
Right. Yeah, no, well, it's also our, the customer service and the quality that we're putting out there. That's our marketing. I'm spending so much money on digital technology that, and these are things that people have never seen before. They get a crown in the same day, and they're coming right back, and they're referring their friends, and it's convenient. You don't have to take one day off from work to get the work done, and that convenience factor and the experience, just just the referrals are just astronomical.
That's great. That's great. Well, yeah. Hey, listen, there's been a ton of takeaways. You've done an exceptional job growing a business quickly with high margins. You don't see that very often. And so I think it's unique. I think you have a unique story. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. And so, I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on and share some of your wisdom.
It's my pleasure. Hopefully, keep on doing the right thing, and being able to change people's lives. Be great.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not selling narcotics, right? That are where your business grows and affects people's health. You're helping their health. You're helping their smile, their teeth, their confidence, their everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not only about patients; it's also about my employees. Changing their lives too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, that's great. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'd love to keep in touch. And, if we do a follow up here in a couple months or maybe next year when you guys get some more locations.
Absolutely. And hopefully I could do it with you down in Orlando in person.
So yeah.
Over Zoom.
There we go. That would be great. Yeah, we'd love that. All right, Dr. Marc. Well, hey, it was a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Fantastic.